Welcome to the Johnny Dell Football Academy podcast on the channel that's trying to answer the whys and hows of the game by talking through and dissecting game film and diving deeper to explain why the X's zig and the O's zag. I am Adam Marino, joined by Mr. Johnny Dell, and we are reminding you, as always, the most fun way to watch is on YouTube, where we go live. There you can comment into the live show. Be sure to hit the notification bell and turn on your notifications so you can be a part of the conversation. We also stream live on Facebook and X. Also, the audio versions are always found on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, if you are live with us in the chat, it's probably because you are subscribed, you've hit the notification bell, and turned those notifications on. So, when sharing with your friends, be sure to let them know. We also love to hear from you outside of our live show. Email us at johnnydellsfootballacademy@gmail.com, and you can always check out the website jfa49.com, as it is the most fun way to support the channel. Also, the way we boost the chat and boost the algorithm is to type out hashtag JD49.
What is up, Niner faithful? Adam Marino is not with us today. I had to go a little bit later, so please, you know the drill. Give me the mic check in the chat. Sometimes it says it's working. Sometimes it doesn't. It can do weird things. But we are back on a Victory Monday, another Victory Monday. We have now had 7 this season, already more by this point in the year than the 49ers had all last year. It is fantastic to see. We had a major blowout victory over the Arizona Cardinals. Now, the Arizona Cardinals also kind of gave us some help, but you can't look at a game like this where it is such a blowout and just say, well, it's just because the other team helped us out. When you have a game that's maybe a 10-point victory, you can say things like that. But when it is an absolute domination fest from beginning to end, literally from the opening kickoff, the vibes were good. You know, when we saw Sky Moore take it 97 yards, could not quite get it into the end zone, and then Christian McCaffrey score right away. And it literally took, I think it was 16 seconds in the game for the 49ers to end up being up in the game, and they never trailed after that. Literally, the 49ers had the lead for 59 minutes and 44 seconds. In the game. So that's always a good way to spend your Sunday, as the 49ers were in command the entire time. And so it was great. It was a stress-free fourth quarter. That was something that we've been wanting a lot. We haven't really had since the New York game, which even the New York game, I'll be honest, and it proved to be true, was that you were worried about what could happen at that MetLife turf. And sure enough, we saw with the loss of Micah Williams that was not truly a stress-free fourth quarter. This one felt pretty out of hand, and I think the only stress I had during the fourth quarter was in that we kept many of our starters in on offense, pretty much all of them, on the last drive to go put up that 42nd point. And so, you know, I was kind of wishing that they weren't in the game at that point. Just really wishing they weren't in the game at that point, but they were. What can you do sometimes? But they ended up making it out, and they scored even more points. I think we all saw from the game that when you had the return of Brock Purdy, the offense just starts to look like the 49ers offense. It's We've been hearing a lot over the last 8 weeks. Should the 49ers go with the hot hand? Should they keep Mac Jones in there when Brock Purdy comes back? Do they even really think about playing him this season? Just let him sit out the rest of the year. Mac's playing fine. You're not going to the playoffs. We've heard a lot of that. We've heard that Mac can do everything Brock can do, and this offense doesn't look any different. Again, that comes from a really, what I feel is a low-level fruit analysis, which it simply looks at the end result on the field as far as passing numbers. But it doesn't actually really look at how do they play quarterback. And when we look at the film and when you see the level of getting through your reads, the level of eye manipulation, the on-time nature of the offense, all of that, this looked like it just looked like the 49ers offense where it was so smooth. It was as smooth as Lake Foy in Montana. If you have ever been there, that is one smooth lake to ride on. That's outside Kalispell, Montana. But where it's just, it's really smooth sailing. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of hiccups. It feels like this is just going to be a nice day out on the lake. That's what it feels like when Brock Purdy is playing with the 49ers generally. It's just, that the offense is going to operate at a certain level, that it's going to work smoothly, that you're going to move the ball, that you're going to get the ball in the right player's hands, and the ball is going to come out on time. And this 49ers offense, when you do that, just starts to look surgical. They start to look like, how do you even slow these guys down? Because it's like, if you try and take away the run, then they're throwing the ball around the field. If you try and take away the pass, then they're running the ball at you. If you try and blitz, they're beating you with quick hitters. If you don't blitz, he's beating you down the intermediate with the chunk plays and all of it. Then you try and drop into the intermediate, and then they're hitting the screen game to George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey, and they're getting chunk plays that way. It's just that's what this offense really started to look like, where anything you do on defense opens up something else, and they take advantage of it. And that's what was so fun to watch throughout this, is that Arizona had no answer the entire game. And it wasn't like they just kept doing the same thing over and over again, hoping for a different result. They kept doing a lot of different things, trying to adapt and take things away throughout the game. And it was like you constantly had a counter to the counter to the counter to the counter. And it was a really efficient game, and you just keep moving, keep scoring points. The defense did help them out in this with 3 turnovers. The things we had talked about last week before the game was that there was 2 elements that the 49ers really had to tighten up. You had to start getting some more chunk plays and explosiveness in the offense, and we saw that. And we said they needed to start getting turnovers by the defense. That they are not a defense that's going to be consistently getting teams off the field on third down and stopping teams from scoring. So you got to jump some routes. You got to take a few more risks, and you got to drive on the football a little bit more, find a way to get the ball out. And they did create 3 turnovers. So that was great to see on that side. Overall, seeing the return of Brock was, I think, great. There is no quarterback controversy. It was so fun to watch. And we saw that from the very second drive, Brock, hitting George Kittle on the rail route. Now that is he talked about it in the post-game presser. That's a new play. I hadn't seen specifically that kind of pairing before. They ran double rail routes. Both Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle were running rail routes. It's kind of, it's a different way. When I went back and looked at the play, it's a different way to run the same kind of concept that has been around for a while. And I thought that was a really good design by Kyle Shanahan, because normally, like if you come against a division opponent and you run the same sort of plays and same sort of concepts all the time from the same looks, then teams start getting a beat on you, and it becomes, especially your division opponents, they know you better than anybody. They have lots of tape compared to everybody. And so what that concept really is something that's been around for a while. A lot of times it's called Haas hitches outside seams. which is you run curl routes to the outside and then you run seam fade routes. We've seen Brock hit Brandon Ayuk on this play a number of times throughout the years. I think he had an 84-yard or 74-yard. It was one of those two. I think it was an 84-yard touchdown to Brandon Ayuk against the Buccaneers in 2023, if I'm remembering it correctly. Where he hit BA down the left sideline on a Haas route. A lot of times we will run that same sort of concept every preseason, and every preseason our backup quarterback hits that throw, and everybody's saying, oh my gosh, the backup now is the guy. They have arrived, because we've seen that with Trey Lance hit that throw back in 2021, I believe when it was, and everybody was clamoring that Trey Lance now was the truth and he needed to start. Mac Jones hit Jordan Watkins to one this last preseason, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, we have a backup quarterback. And so that is that Haas play. You run that hitch outside and you run a fade. This time we ran it with hitches outside, and we had both George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey running rail routes. So it's the same end result. You get this players in the same positions, they're running similar routes, but you are running it from different looks and different presentations, and really different routes. Instead of it being a slot fade, it's a go route that starts from a condensed inside the formation and gets all the way outside. So that's really fascinating to watch on that. And that's the stuff that you love to see from Kyle Shanahan, how he consistently figures out how to get different players and run what are traditional passing concepts out of different formations and different personnel and different alignments to end up with the same result, which is you get that middle safety in a bind where you're running man coverage and those go routes on the outside. And in that, Brock is dropping back and he's reading the middle safety. Whoever side he shades to, he was going to throw the opposite, because he had both McCaffrey and George Kittle open down the sidelines. It was really going to be where can the safety not help as much? And Brock, you see it, the processing just so quick. He drops back and the safety did not even turn hard. It was just literally a half step shading towards McCaffrey's side, and he triggered the throw to Kittle, just a dime of a throw that beat the safety. The safety was still there within 2 yards, and he beat the safety, and that's all it took. That quick process or that quick trigger when he sees it, so that's the kind of stuff that you see from Brock that this is what we've known about Brock for a while, and sometimes people forget. We tried to run these rail routes twice against New York, and both times Mac turned it down. And I think I talked about that on Friday's show, that we had that specific route and Mac had turned it down, and there you go. And the fact that Brock saw pre-snap what he needed to can the play, because that was originally supposed to be a run, and he ended up canning to the pass, and he did that. And you could see he was a little bit hesitant. This goes back to his film study, because I watched the play and I watched the pre-snap motion 10 times, and I still was a little bit taken aback by what did Brock see to tell them that was man coverage, because pre-snap there was not a lot there that said this was man coverage. They sent McCaffrey in a motion out in, and nobody traveled with him. All that happened was Budda Baker took one step outside and then he stepped back in. But the alignment, they had Kittle and Juice on to the right side, and the Cardinals had one of their corners. Melton was their corner to the right side. So this is a zone look the whole way. And it was only right before the snap that you see Brock, because one of the linebackers took a step towards Kittle and Juice, and he said, okay, they're running man over there. And so that's when he canned the play. I mean, it was just like, man, like to diagnose what he saw pre-snap and say, okay, this is going to be man coverage, to see it and then read that safety. I'm watching the play right now. It's awesome. because he had George Kittle on, one of their linebackers, and he just cooked him. I mean, that's the stuff you see from Brock that you just go, gosh, that is fun to watch. It's fun for me, somebody breaking down the tape that's fun to watch. And so, yeah, it was a great win, great week. We're gonna have a good week this week. I think the for the most part, I think there's going to be some people that try really, really hard to tell us that Brock didn't actually play that great of a game yesterday. And that's just absolutely wild. The 49ers scored their highest point total this season by a pretty wide margin. And if you actually look at how, nobody will look back on the Seahawks Cardinals game and say that Sam Darnold didn't play a good game, or that the Seahawks didn't just absolutely steamroll the Cardinals and prove, that they beat the Cardinals how a good team should beat the Cardinals. Nobody's going to turn around and say, yeah, there's that game, it didn't really tell us anything about the Seahawks. They're going to say, no, that actually tells us that the Seahawks are a good team that will absolutely stomp on weak teams. The 49ers and Seahawks in their 2 weeks had the same scores. And what I mean that is type of scores as each other. They both scored 5 touchdowns and 3 field goals. The difference was the 49ers had 2 missed extra points. That's why the Seahawks scored 44 on them. We scored 42. But I mean, that was how the game went. When you have 8 scoring drives against an opponent, I don't even care if you get 3 turnovers by your defense. That's really impressive. And I don't care who it's against. And if they're banged up, because you know who's been banged up more than the Cardinals this year? The 49ers. And the 49ers never got beat as bad as the Cardinals just got beat. They got absolutely dog walked. The game was never really in doubt. I mean, it got a little bit close there in the second quarter, but then we just started walking away from them and everything. And so that was great to see. And all of this with the return of Brock helped out the run game. We finally started to see that the run game started to look like the 49ers run game. It's kind of wild that, it just happens to be that, that the 49ers, when they are the healthiest they've been on offense all season, the run game looks the best that it's looked all season. So, that was what I was expecting that. It's one of those that if it doesn't happen, you get concerned. But the fact that it did happen, that this was the best game I felt that the run game had all year is a huge positive. Christian McCaffrey in this game, he averaged 6.2 yards per carry. That is the highest mark he's had all season by a wide margin. His second best game was Atlanta, and it was 5.4 yards per carry. Every other game has been 3.5 or below. And so being 6.2 yards per carry, that's what we're used to from this 49ers offense. We're used to Christian McCaffrey, 6 yards a carry. We're used to Brock Purdy, 2 and 3 touchdowns a game, it seems like. And we keep moving. And Brock Purdy is now number 2, only the second quarterback to have, is second on the list of games of a quarterback rating of 125 or more in his first 4 years in the NFL. He just hit 12 games where he had a quarterback rating of 125 or more during his first 4 seasons. The only player who has more, and not doing so hot now, but when he was in his first 4 years, he drove the 49ers nuts, and that was Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson had 15 games of a quarterback rating of 125 or more in his first 4 seasons. That's wild that Brock could actually beat that and be the player with the most games of a quarterback rating of 125 or more in his first 4 years, considering that he didn't even start his half of his rookie year because he was behind everybody in the depth chart, and that he's missed half this year with a turf toe. So really, Brock's done this in 3 seasons. 3 seasons of play, that Brock has ended up with 12 games of a quarterback rating of 125 plus. Nobody in the history of the NFL has done that in the amount of games that Brock has actually played. that these arguments just start to become so ridiculous when people say, there should be a quarterback controversy. Oh, they overpaid for Brock. These things start to look just more and more ridiculous the more you dive into everything with this. There is no comparison here. So it's great to have your starting quarterback back. Wanted to answer this question. I pinned it from Cayman's Island podcast. Good friend, Cayman's Island. Go check his podcast out. Click on his icon there, his name. It'll take you to his YouTube channel, and you can subscribe to his channel. Subscribe, like, share the love. He's a 49ers content creator. He is part of the faithful. Support all of us. He said, I heard Brock yell reload a few times. You hear him go reload, reload, reload. What that means is they call two plays in the huddle usually. One's going to be a run, one's going to be a pass, and generally sometimes it's two pass plays, sometimes it's two run plays. Most of the time it's a run that checks to a pass, or it's a pass that checks to a run most of the time. And so you'll hear him yell out can. That is checking the play. That's checking to the second play that they have called. When you hear him yell reload, that is going back to the original play that was called. I'm trying to pull up an example of one of these, because a lot of times we actually have a lot of the plays built in for excuse me. So I'm just what happens when I try and do two things at the same time. When you will have plays that if you can't block a certain look, we have a specific play that will can to, and it's built into the playbook. Sometimes it is game plan specific. So I was trying to find an example, like some of our wide zone runs, it will have whatever the formation is, then 17 Zorro can to, and then it has a specific pass play, usually a drift. It's usually can to Z drift is what a lot of times it will be. So what that means is that they can't block, and it specifically will say against buzz coverage. So what that means is if a safety is looking like it's going to come down into to be a box safety late from a two shell presentation, that the way that the linebackers are going to shift out, you can't account for that box safety. So what you're going to do then is put them in a bind, because they know they're going to be the unblocked guy. So you run that play action, Adam, you bring that box safety up, that buzz safety, and then you run the drift route in behind them. That is what the can and the reload a lot of times is what we see. But going over to the defense, they're still a bit undermanned, and we lost Tatum Bethune in this game. It's feared he's got a high ankle sprain, which is usually a 4 to 6 week recovery. So he could be out for the most important stretch of the season so far. Now Curtis Martin, I've been positive on him for a while. I haven't gotten to his portion of the tape yet to see how Curtis Martin did. He's been a quality player. He's been a good player for a while. He's not in that kind of closing speed tier of Tatum Bethune. I do think that Curtis Martin has shown a little bit more discipline and understanding of the defense in his last couple of years than Tatum Bethune has. Tatum Bethune is a very, very aggressive player, but he hasn't been a Fred Warner. So, I think there's going to be a little give and take with what goes in there with Curtis Martin. The bigger thing is that now you become really thin at linebacker, because that they're going to be looking to add somebody and bring somebody up. If it turns out that Tatum Bethune has a high ankle sprain, they're almost surely going to put him on IR, short-term IR, designated to return. So they can, if they, supposedly or possibly make it to the playoffs, then you and he's ready to go, then you can activate Tatum back off. But you've got to bring in some more reinforcements there, especially at the Mike position. I don't see D Winters stepping inside to play Mike. I think Luke Gifford's probably now the next in line for Mike, and I know that's going to make a lot of people uneasy. A lot of people have been kind of down on on Luke Gifford. But Nick Martin, I would not feel great about putting Nick Martin in there at Mike, because that Mike not only, and yeah, they can give the green dot to anybody there, which is getting the calls in from the sideline. It doesn't mean that he's necessarily going to have to make the calls, but just be physically from his position on the field, the Mike backer tends to have a better view of everything because you're right in the middle. And so you can see it's harder for a guy, and you can communicate to either side better. It's harder for a guy that's an outside linebacker to make those calls. I had to do that when I was in high school. I started out Mike. Our Will was playing. He was struggling. They moved me over to Will and brought another guy in. They felt like that would help us out a little bit more. And I had to make all the calls and from Will, and that was hard to communicate to my strong side safety of when we had some shifts or when we had bump outs and stuff. So like that's actually on field, just practically, that is a hard thing to do, is have your Will make a lot of the calls that are going to be out there. So I don't think they're going to ask D Winters to slide inside. If Nick Martin was to be put in at Mike, I don't think you like the idea of him having to now make all those calls and do all that stuff. So honestly, just to keep your defense, the communication, and that you have the same call, you're all in the same call. Luke Gifford is going to be the guy that comes in and plays Mike if Curtis Robinson can't go, or he can't finish a game for some reason. So that is concerning. This defense now, has been down some major studs, and now you're down another layer. Don't know what the status is with Eddie Pinheiro right now. It doesn't look like, to me, from watching the tape, and I made it through the second quarter, it doesn't look like that Pinheiro actually hurt his hamstring on that blocked PAT. It doesn't look like it. He was moving fine in the plays after that. So I don't know when Pinheiro pulled his hamstring, as I've already been over this 800 times on the show. We have far too many hamstring injuries for this team. I'm over this strength and conditioning staff, the player health staff. Like there's just an issue. They have to address it. They have to address it going forward. We can't look at the end of the season and say, well, the 49ers are getting a little bit healthier comparative to the rest of the league. You have had the worst injury 2 months of this season as anybody's ever had in the NFL. You can't just, become prisoners of the moment at the end of the season and say, well, we rebounded well. No, you ended the year still with 3 huge guys on IR, and you had all these other issues. No, things have got to change there. But as far as defense, and I knew this question was coming. I knew it was coming. Let us know how Nick Martin played. I have it in the notes here. Still watching tape to see how Nick Martin did. I put it in the notes even to remind myself to mention Nick Martin, because I know that is a player that everybody is wanting to know about. I haven't looked much at him. I've only seen, I think, 4 or 5 snaps that Nick Martin was in on. Didn't have a big impact because it wasn't a play to his side. And sometimes that's what happens when you have a linebacker come in. I will say CJ West just jumped off the tape in the first two quarters. It was awesome. I said it last week. CJ West has got to get more snaps. I think they're working through some footwork stuff with him. They have been. And I think that broken hand, it kind of sounds weird that a broken hand would set you back on the bet. When you tie footwork to hand movements and all this stuff, I think they've been working through that with CJ West. But the kid was showing versus the Cardinals exactly what he showed at Indiana. He is a stout guy that can take on these double team blocks, that has a nasty butt rip move that is as nasty as anybody in the NFL or anybody that I've seen. He absolutely tossed one of the Cardinals offensive linemen on his face on a duo run. It was one, the Cardinals are running off the right side. It was CJ West and Alfred Collins were in there. The duo blocks came down. CJ anchored with his right shoulder against the one blocker, grabbed the other guy, pressed, and then just tossed him on his face, and then attacked the run lane, and he kind of dove on the pile at the end. That CJ West, just was really popping off the tape. He needs to get more reps. The only downside that you have with CJ West when it comes to third down, because we need to get more pressure third down, is that he's not able to run a lot of these, real athletic stunts and twists that they want, because they want those 4 defensive end athletic guys to be able to run all these stunts and twists. They want to make life easier for their pass rushers. So part of me, and I don't want to go all the way back to what Nick Sorensen did, which was almost none of those, and just line up and let's win. Part of me does say, though, we need to get Alfred Collins and CJ West out there and have these guys bull rush and just press the interior. It feels like we need to make quarterbacks less comfortable up the middle. And so part of me kind of wants to see that. Again, there's trade-offs. There are trade-offs with that, but part of me wants to see that, because then also what teams can do is they can go max protect, and then they're just going to hold back, and they can kind of hold up against that, and now your coverage can be exposed for a little bit longer. But part of me just wants to see that. I kind of want to see. I just want to see the havoc being wreaked on there. I will say, I think some of the numbers as far as 49ers pressure rate is a little skewed. Because I've seen some numbers out there. The Cardinals were allowing like 48% pressure rate coming in, and then the 49ers only generated like 15% pressure rate. I do think some of that is skewed, and here's the 2 reasons why. One, Kyler Murray was a problem for a lot of their pressure rates. He was running himself into pressure, not getting the ball out on time. Those 2 things. Kyler Murray's been known for that his entire career. The fact that he does that has led to some of his explosives where he runs around and makes a play, but it also is why the team has struggled being consistently competitive and consistently consistent. So I think that that's a situation where some of that was overinflated by Kyler Murray for the Cardinals. The other part is the 49ers defense that last quarter was literally just playing soft zones. It was don't give anything deep and cheap and make them just burn 8 minutes off the clock by throwing it underneath and just beep, 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 and take 20 plays going down the field. That's what it was about. We weren't bringing any more pressure. We weren't bringing blitzes. It was soft zones the whole time. Keep everything in front of you. We're not going to let them score in a minute and a half. We're going to let them score. It's going to take them 7 minutes, but we're going to burn this game down and just get out of here. Try and get out with your win. Don't take any chances. That's honestly what was happening the last like 3 drives that the Cardinals had, because the game was so out of hand by that point. So like when you have a quarterback that drops back like 30 times in that sort of a situation, because Jacoby Brissett had like 57 dropbacks. It was like 30 of those came in those last few drives, where you're not bringing pressure, you're playing soft, and he's getting 6 and 7 yard passes the entire time. Yes, it's going to make it look like you cannot create any sort of pressure. In the first 2 quarters, we did get a good amount of pressure on Jacoby Brissett. He made some really good throws in there, but they also didn't score a lot of points. So not a huge concern as for me as I don't, yes, the 49ers defense has not been good with pressure. It's not to say it's not a concern. It's just, it's not quite the hit the panic button sort of situation. They are coming along as far as some scheme things and getting these new guys who had never, because remember, we installed that entire NASCAR package during training camp with Bryce Huff, Yetur Gross-Matos, Nick Bosa, and Mykel Williams, and 3 of those guys were not playing in this game. So you are now trying to reinstall that package during the year with guys that you're just even trying to teach how to play your base downs on defensive end. So it's a work in progress, and it will be. There's only so much work they can put into it during the weeks. And because you can't sacrifice being ready on first down for that. You've got to kind of live through it. And in that, hopefully, as this offense is getting healthier, that they can lead the way. And secondary, I'd like to see them stay aggressive like they were in this game. I'm okay with you giving up a touchdown if you get 2 interceptions, like because you're being aggressive. I'm okay with that, because that to me is a lot better than just giving up 3 touchdowns, because that's kind of what it would be. So that's where that's at. Big shout out here with the super chat, Cayman's Island podcast. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate you so much. He said, I was talking with my son last night, and he asked me what my thoughts were regarding where the 49ers would be if remotely healthy. I feel like we would be 11-0 and would be in the Super Bowl. Thoughts? That is bold. That is a bold statement. That is as bold as my coffee this morning. I get some strong coffee. I get good coffee. I grew up in the Northwest. Anybody who's not lived in the Northwest does not understand how into coffee people are. I order my coffee from a smaller, not super small, but smaller roaster up there in the Washington area. They aren't sponsoring us, but I'm going to give them a shout out anyways because I feel like it. Batdorf and Bronson, also known as the Dancing Goats Blend. If you ever want some great coffee, you can get this on Amazon. You can get it in a 5-pound bag for, I think it's $92 is what they send it in. It will be shipped to your door, and you will probably get it within 4 or 5 days of when it was roasted. 5-pound whole bean coffee. That's what fuels all of this film breakdown. But anyways, that is a bold statement that we would be 11-0 and are headed for the Super Bowl. I don't think we would be 11-0, but I do think we would be better than we are now. Obviously, I think that's a pretty vanilla statement. Kind of a duh. You'd be a little bit better than you are now. And no, I do not go. I've never been to one of those. Well, okay, I won't say never. I went to one by accident, okay, and and this sounds weird, but what happened was where I was in Washington, there was some people going through and they were buying up all the little coffee huts all throughout our town, and it would be one day it was a normal coffee shop, and then the next day you'd show up and it was a very different kind of coffee shop, and you had no forewarning, and so it was one that I went to all the time and pulled in one day, and I was like, oh, that wasn't what I was expecting with my coffee. So, so anyways, but back to this question. I think if we were completely healthy, nobody would be questioning this 49ers team of who have they beaten. Let's see them beat somebody better. Let's see them do this against a better team. Because when you look at who they have beat this year, week 1, if not for Jake Moody missing 2 bad field goals while having one blocked and then just outright missing a 27-yard field goal, you are talking about beating the team that many people have as one of the strongest playoff teams in the NFC. Right now, the Rams might be the best team in the NFC, and the 49ers, with no Nick Bosa, but still had Fred and Michael Williams, beat that Rams team on a short week in overtime with Mac Jones and didn't have Ricky Pearsall. Didn't have BA out there. Didn't have George Kittle. So it is a little frustrating to look at this season and think, gosh, if they were healthy, that you're talking about the 49ers as who's going to really beat the 49ers, who in January is a good matchup against San Francisco. Because you start looking at what their defense would be. You look at what their offense would be getting even to going into January, and you look at the defenses around the NFC. I'm just keeping it in the NFC right now. You keep you look at the defenses in the NFC, and you're saying, well, it's going to be Seattle or LA are probably the 2 best defenses in the NFC that could match up against the 49ers, and neither one of those could stop the 49ers. And the 49ers beat those 2 teams. So I do think that if the 49ers were healthy, that you really do have an honest conversation that the 49ers are a Super Bowl contender, as wild as that sounds, in a reset year, in a year where you shed a bunch of veteran contracts to come back or to try and reset your cap situation, that you could be in that conversation. And unfortunately, because of some really devastating injuries, nobody is really taking the 49ers seriously as a playoff contender. And it's on them to change that narrative. I'm not going to put that on, well, people need to start putting respect on the 49ers name. No, these guys who are, the reason you don't believe that is because you have a lot of unprovens. Nobody who's proven on that defensive side of the ball that they can be elite on that side of the ball, because the guys who did are not there right now. And that's Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. So D Winners, you want to change that narrative. You prove that you're an elite player down the stretch. D Winners had, I think, his best game of the year yesterday, which was a huge swing for him. He had been on a downward swing. He had a great game. Great game. I criticized him on Friday. Look, he balled out. Diamador Lenore, you came up with a big time pick. You've got to prove that you are the hyena, that you are a player, that you are a shutdown corner on your side, that you're going to be a black hole over there that they can't throw into. Malik Mustafa, you came up with that pick, but you also gave up a touchdown. You've got to prove, and I get it. He's working his way back. He is not, he's still a young player, but you have the skill set to be a dynamic safety in this league. Start showing it. Tig Brown, you came out at the beginning of the year and said you believe you're a top 5 safety. You have to prove to people that you are a top 5 safety. You have not proven that yet at all. Alfred Collins, CJ West, start taking over games. Bryce Huff, be what you were at the beginning of the year. I know he's probably still a little bit slower coming back from that hammy, but those guys have got to change the narrative. They've got to be the ones that make everybody say, you doubt us? Well, now you can't. It's time for you to start believing. 49ers offense, if you want the team to be in that conversation of one of the top teams in the NFL, then you have got to consistently put up 35 points from here on out, because your defense, they need that help. So that's where I see, and I do believe that if the 49ers were remotely healthy, then they are in the conversation. Because when you look around and that's, again, it's what's so frustrating about the state of the 49ers health this year, because this is one of the weakest NFLs we've seen in a long time. It feels like, it really does feel like this is partially what the NFL wanted. They wanted more parity, and this feels like, honestly, one of the best parity leagues or years in the league, because there's no, like, if you have that tier A team that is just in a different class than everybody else, the 49ers were that in 2023. During those first 6 weeks of the year, the 49ers were in a tier among themselves, and the rest, it was like the 49ers and then the rest of the NFL. And then they kind of petered off there in the middle of the year, and then ascended kind of back to that. And then unfortunately couldn't get it done in the Super Bowl with the overtime loss. But during those 6 weeks of the year, the 49ers were just dominating. I mean, dominating everybody, both sides of the ball. And they were a tier into themselves. And it felt like that was a team that was bound to get into the Super Bowl, and it would have been a letdown if they didn't make it to the Super Bowl. That would have been a huge disaster. But you look at, like, this year, there's no team like that. There's no team that you can look at in the NFC and say, if they don't make it to the Super Bowl, then they have some big time explaining to do. I think you see a lot of talented teams. I mean, the Rams are as talented as anybody with the weapons they have on offense and that just monster D line. But they're not impervious. They have some holes. Can Matt Stafford, can his back hold up over the next 6 weeks? That's been the question. Matt Stafford, traditionally the last few years, because of that back situation, has started to dip as we end November and into December and then early January. His play has started to dip each year around that time, because that back starts catching up to him. And so for me, it's like, okay, I got to see how they finish this year. Because, Sam Darnold played a terrible game yesterday. Absolutely. I mean, pretty much gave the game away through 4 interceptions, and that was still a super narrow margin of victory for the the Rams. It was 21-19. If we only beat the Seahawks by 2 points and Sam Darnold threw 4 interceptions, people would be looking at us and saying, what is wrong with the team? We should have won by 3 scores. You picked their quarterback gave you 4 interceptions. And so, like so yes, the Rams have a great record. We beat them in overtime. They barely beat a Seattle team that the quarterback turned it over 4 times. There's no team in the NFL, in the NFC at least, that I look at and I say the 49ers have no chance. And when I look at the 49ers healthy, I don't know if there's a team in the NFC that I look at and I say that team is better than the 49ers. I just don't. So I think you're right there, Cayman. I think you're right. Now, I wouldn't say it's 11-0, but I think this is probably a 9-2 team if you're healthy. So, anyways, hopefully next year. But no, as far as the rest of this year, look, we still don't know. There's a lot that can happen with the 49ers. There's a lot that can happen with every other team in the NFC over the next 6 weeks. We don't know how is Sam Darnold in Seattle, not playing in a dome where he did in Minnesota. How does he start playing as the weather gets even colder there in Seattle? Look, anybody who's not been in Seattle doesn't really understand the kind of cold and difficulty it is there in Seattle. Seattle is a different cold than Green Bay. Okay. Green Bay, it's a dry cold. It is bone chillingly cold, but Seattle is this kind of like wear you down kind of cold. And I honestly do think it affects bodies up there because you end up with such little sunlight. Like, it affects people's mood. They start getting depressed. The days get so short. These guys are going to be literally showing up to the facility when it is pitch black outside, leaving the facility, and it will be pitch black outside. And you do sometimes see that with teams. He's got to then operate in up there in Seattle, where it, like, this time of year through the end of the season, it's almost every day is going to be like 38 degrees and drizzle rain. That's actually really hard to play football, and you feel cold. It's a very, very wet cold. You feel completely cold all the time. So we'll see how that starts affecting Sam Darnold and what goes on in there. Those two teams may fall off at the end of the season. We'll see. Don't know what can happen. The Eagles do not look like any sort of juggernaut this year. They have issues. The Lions look like they cannot figure out what they really want to be. They kind of want to be something, but they can't get out of their own way. They can't get things rolling. They're very inconsistent. So, their Green Bay looks like, apparently, Steph Sanchez, she was joking yesterday is there a quarterback controversy up in Green Bay? Green Bay, they're one that they're not going to make anybody a believer until they can make people a believer. So, Green Bay, I don't know, Chicago, they're up and down. We got to go play them. We don't know what kind of team shows up there. I don't know what to think of Chicago because they beat the Vikings 19-17, and people are, talking like here that the Bears and Caleb Williams have arrived. Yet on the other side of the coin, the team that only lost to them by 2 points, people are talking about that this is a disaster and that they have a disaster quarterback situation. The 49ers are going to trade a Mac Jones this offseason. Okay, which is it? Is it that the Bears have arrived, or that the Vikings are just a complete mess and barely lost to a team that's not much better than them? I don't know. So, looking through the landscape, this is going to be a really interesting final month and a half of the year. There is a real pathway that coming into week 16, both are all of the Rams, the Seahawks, and 49ers are all 10-4. There is a real pathway to that. Seattle is 7-3 right now. The 49ers are 7-4. Very, very possible that the Seahawks go 3-1 over their next few games, next 4 games. Very possible that the 49ers go 3-0 over their next games. Very possible that the Rams go 2-2. They're 8-2 right now. It is very possible, or at the very least, you could end up coming into the end of into that stretch with the Rams just one game ahead of the 49ers and Seahawks, who are both have the same record, and the 49ers have the tiebreaker. So in all of it, like you're looking at the back end of this schedule is going to be really exciting in the NFC West, because every game is going to be a playoff game, is what it's going to feel like. If for the 49ers, it's going to feel like the playoffs start in week 16, because they're playing three good teams during that stretch, and teams that have winning records, and including Seattle at the last game of the year. And the Rams and Seahawks play again during that stretch as well. So some real big games coming up. It'll be really interesting to see how this shakes out at the end of the season. But it's great to have Brock back. It's great to see the team have a dominant victory and everything. Thank you for tuning in with me. This is a fun show. We got through it. I'm going to hopefully get back and jump into the film stuff. I haven't gotten all the film in yet. I can watch it on NFL Pro, NFL Plus. I normally pull it from there. It's not up. They've only got 3 games that aren't up. It's the 49ers, Cardinals, Rams, Seahawks, and the Cleveland Baltimore game are the only 3 games that they don't have. They have the Lions and Eagles game up, so I don't know about that. But stay tuned. Tomorrow we'll be coming in with the review breakdown video. Thank you, everybody, for being here, being in the chat. Thank you for the super chats, Mr. Cayman's Island. You're always fantastic on that. I appreciate it. But until next time, I have no Adam to cut off. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, go Niners.